We're back. I can't believe it. Welcome to the D1Softball podcast. I'm Jenna Becerra, and this is my co-host, Amanda Lorenz. It is our first official episode of 2025. Amanda, can you believe that? I can't.
No, I can't believe it. We're here, but I'm excited about it. I'm so happy to be back and so excited to watch some good softball.
Oh, yes. Cannot wait. And for those who tuned in last season, thank you for doing that. And anyone joining us for the first time, welcome. We are actually super excited to be part of the Learfield family. So many teams, schools, athletic departments, and just great sports content across the board in the Learfield family and Varsity Network. So just a reminder, when you're out of town and want to keep up with live college sports, be sure to download the free Varsity Network app, available for both Apple and Android. Get your games on the go with the Varsity Network app. I've used it before, even calling games on radio, utilizing it for that. So highly recommend. But maybe we should take this opportunity to reintroduce ourselves too, Amanda. You first.
Well, hello, everyone. We're back. I'm Amanda Lorenz, four-time All-American from the University of Florida, current Athletes Unlimited professional softball player, play with the U.S. women's national team as well, and just a certified softball lover who's excited to chat softball with my great host, Jenna.
Aw, thanks. They call her Mandy Softball for a reason. I know that's not necessarily your favorite nickname, but you know, it does.
No, it's been the one that has stuck, that's for sure.
Yes, you do. You are all things softball, though, in the best way.
I try.
Yeah, exactly. And I also have to add to your intro, reigning Athletes Unlimited champion from this past year, too. Just saying. Just saying.
Once upon a time.
It was literally in the fall.
Yeah, it's okay.
But okay, fine. And then my less cool resume. So I'm a Stanford softball alum. I lead the digital team at D1Softball. We get to do cool content like this show. I also do broadcasting for the ACC and Stanford Athletics, and I host the Believe in Softball podcast with the Believe Network. But of course, love always doing this week to week with my co-host, Amanda.
So excited.
So one thing that I wanted to talk with you first, like right off the bat, Amanda, is I have to say, congratulations!
Thank you.
Selected to the Volts in the inaugural AUSL draft. And I had to put like your team up here too, because your team is freaking stacked. And then of course you have Kat Osterman and Kelly Crutchman as your people. What? Amazing.
Yeah, not bad company, right? I'm really excited for the summer. Obviously really thankful for another chance to keep playing. This is my 7th year playing professional softball, which is wild. If you told my younger self that like my job would be just playing softball, I'd be pretty pumped up about that. So I'm really excited heading into the inaugural year. Really excited for the teammates that I'll get to play with. And I'm really excited to get better.
Well, that was one thing. I think I saw some tweets. People were excited because when you came on TV, like on our screens during the draft, you said that you were excited to be coached. Yeah. And you're whether you'll say it or not, I'll say it, one of the best in the game right now, but you're still excited to be coached, which I think is such a cool thing for the young ones to hear.
Yeah, you don't know what you have until it's gone, right? Like just a few years of being in AU where it's all us and no coaches, and it's a cool model, but you know, I'm really craving the accountability and someone to, you know, not let me slack on the little things. I just really want to get better and have another set of eyes other than me just setting up my tripod and seeing what I can see. I'm really, really excited to not only learn from my teammates, but learning from Kelly. I love talking hitting with Kelly. And so I know that our pros across the whole league are going to get a lot better this summer. And that's what really excites me.
Well, and Kat Osterman said it when she selected you in the draft. Best hitter in the game right now is what it is. Again, stuff you won't say, but I'm going to. And you're also the first position player taken because 7 of the 8 first picks, so the first 2 rounds, everyone but you were pitchers, which makes sense. But that's pretty cool that you were the sort of the first one to get things rolling with everyone else.
Yeah, really cool. And I don't take that lightly. I'm working my butt off this off season to make sure that I can help my team win in any way possible, because we could have had another great arm, but you know, Kat and Kelly took me. So I'm really excited and I'm thankful for the opportunity.
Yes. So excited to watch you. And I have to give a shout out to your Gators because Florida was tied for second in terms of programs who produce the most draftees. So got to give some Gator love there.
Yeah, you know that I'll always take the Gator love. Go Gators, baby.
Had to do it.
Yeah.
Had to do it. Well, had to also acknowledge that first before we get into anything else, because that was huge. And even just the bridge that's being built. Yeah, between college softball and pro. And I feel like you're a part of that movement, which is really cool.
Yeah, so many that came before me that really laid the groundwork, but I'm really thankful for all the work that they've done. So we're getting, the fruits of their labor and hope to keep growing this thing so that the next generation enjoys it even more.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. Well, and we do have a next generation, at least with the freshman class, of college softball players coming onto the scene this year. So why don't we take a look at the preseason top 25 rankings? All right. This is what it looks like. So maybe a few call outs while we're having a chance to actually see it all together. So every 2024 World Series team is in the rankings, something to keep in mind as you're looking through this. And then you'll notice that Nigel Kennedy and Jordy Ball have helped elevate Texas Tech, number 13 in this, and Nebraska, number 14 in this, respectively. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the breakdown by conference, the SEC leads the way with 9 teams. The Big Ten has 6, ACC 4, Big 12 4, and then 2 that are outside the power conferences, Conference USA and the Patriot League, getting some representation. So quite a lot to take in. When you look at that, we haven't even seen anybody play yet.
Yeah.
Like gut reaction when you see it.
Well, what I've seen in the last couple of years that makes me excited is I feel like our preseason rankings go off of what the rosters will look like in 2025 and not just where we left off in the previous year. And I think that each publication has done a better job of like really looking at that. So, I could think people would say like, what? Oh, you just won 4 times in a row. How could they not meet number 1? Like, what is going on? Well, the Gators, I know I'm extremely biased about the Gators. I think they deserve that number 1 ranking, right? I mean, they really hit their stride towards the end of the year. They did not lose much. They lost Skylar Wallace, but other than that, they're pretty much the same team. They got some really good transfers. And so I think that this 2025 squad for the Gators looks really, really strong. And obviously as a Gator alum, I'm really excited about that. And I think Texas is the same way, right? Didn't lose much, returning basically the same team. So obviously those 2 stand out for me, but just off the bat, that's what stands out to me is that we obviously here at D1 looked at what are these rosters looking like for 2025? And does that mean like, OU, this is just what, it's just the beginning. Preseason doesn't mean anything. We just want to see the OU newcomers that have to step up. We want to see them step up. Do we doubt that they can step up? No, we know that they're going to step up, but they just don't have the track record, that the other athletes on Florida and Texas do at this time. So that's initially what was my gut reaction.
I think I'm so glad you brought that up too, that it's based on this year's team, not just what happened last year. So that's people who graduated, freshmen, transfers. There could even be staff changes, right? So many things change from year to year. So I'm so glad that you brought that up because yes, a lot of people are wondering, how has OU not number 1? They're number 3 in our poll with winning 4 natties in a row. And you literally have Natty Patty, right? So that can be a legitimate question. But when you lose 10 seniors, which I'll go ahead and call them the best class of all time because they won 4 consecutive championships.
Yes.
But in those seniors too, key people like the battery with Kelly Maxwell, Kinsey Hansen, the spine of the field with Tiare Jennings, Jada Coleman in the outfield, like those are important anchor type positions that they're just going to be challenged this year. That's all. And you said it with Texas and Florida, young pitching staffs that are back, which is so key in that circle.
Yep, exactly.
Plus you get Riley Holtorf, who's a great addition for the Gators as well and others as well.
Yeah, we added Riley Holtorf and Kenley, I'm going to pronounce her last name wrong, from Alabama as well. So obviously having those amazing athletes from those schools adding to the infield with the Gators, it's going to be awesome. And I'm excited to see them in the orange and blue for sure.
Yes. Kenley Cahalan.
Thank you. Cahalan. I always say Cahalan and I knew it was wrong.
That's what what I'm here for. But also, like, I appreciate it. Everybody gets my last name wrong always. So I try.
I want to say it right. So I'd rather just be like,
there it is.
You know what I mean?
I gotcha. Another question that people have been asking is that Texas A&M, they're outside the top 8. They're number 9, so barely. But some people feel like, they think that there might be one of the teams that makes it to Oklahoma City. They barely missed out last year in one of the best super regionals we've ever seen with Texas.
Yeah, I don't put in the rankings, so I can be as unbiased as possible with these. But yeah, they would be in my top 8 over Florida State. I think that obviously with the way that Florida State was pretty young last year, but again, like what they're bringing into this year, and Texas A&M returning a lot of their big contributors. And so I'm excited about Texas A&M, especially after the super regional. Like that made me so excited to see how they perform under pressure. You know that they're ready for the big moments, and they expected to make it to Oklahoma City when the rest of the world was like, no, they're not going to beat Texas. Right. But they, inside their program, which is all that matters, you could tell that they expected it and they wanted it. And so I think that is scary for every other team that has to face the Aggies this year, because they're ready, and they're ready for every moment. They're ready for the big moments, and they want it.
Right. We talked to Trisha Ford about that too last year when we had her on the podcast, and you could just feel that energy. Like we left that conversation, we were both like, I'm so fired up right now after talking with her. Yeah. And so you can see how that just kind of trickles down throughout the whole team.
Yes.
Yeah. And also our preseason All-American list. I mean, Emily Kennedy on the D1 preseason first team All-American team. That's a pretty important position to have, somebody who has been proven in the past and also is poised to continue high performance.
Yes.
So maybe let's put this up again so we can look, because it's, 25 teams. It's still so early. You said already that you would probably have A&M in your top 8. If you could make a change other than that, what do you think it would be? Whether it's moving them up, down, putting someone in, dropping them out of the poll. What do you think?
I think Texas Tech is pretty high. I think that obviously Nyjah is going to do amazing things, but we haven't seen her in this environment yet. And I think the difference between that, you could say the same argument for Nebraska, except I feel like something's brewing at Nebraska. Some homegrown Nebraska girls are coming back, and it just seems like home, where I feel like something really special is brewing there. And obviously this is just what you see on social media and interviews, but it just feels a little bit different in that aspect of it. Feels like, the girls at Nebraska have a long-standing history, where I don't know that I'm feeling that from Texas Tech yet. Maybe that's just because, hey, I don't see that the social media as much from them. So it's not, I don't know, that it's just what my gut is telling me, that that's a little high at this point. And I just want to see it in action. I want to see Nyjah in the Texas Tech uniform. I want to see the way that dugout looks, and this new identity with Coach Glasgow, and obviously some new people in there, some transfers. But I'm excited to see it. I just don't know that I would have them as high as 13 to start the year.
Well, and to be fair, you said it. We're talking about the teams this year. So like you keep in mind that they've added certain talent, but then you also think about the fact that, okay, they haven't actually played together yet, all of those types of things too. So with that in mind, it is interesting. It's trying to balance that, right? Like what's been proven and what do we think is going to happen? That's why it's so hard to do these.
Exactly.
I would say too, like if I look at it again, if you look at the top 5, I feel like that there's some fairness there, or at least makes sense, because all 5 of these teams, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, UCLA, Oklahoma State, all are returning key players or have brought in really solid talent. And they all went to the World Series last year. Again, that doesn't mean everything, but you can make those arguments. You can see where those arguments could be coming from. Of course, Tennessee, Duke, Florida State, Texas A&M, those are all solid teams, but it's harder to pick the exact order. Like I think you can make different arguments for who's in the top 5 in terms of what order it's in, but the pool sort of makes sense. But with that being said too, I'm also curious, because it's just one of those things where, like, you see, for example, Stanford 22, they went to the World Series last year, but we're keeping in mind the talent changes that there have been, right? So that makes sense. But then you see Arizona getting up there a little bit at number 12. I just think it's really interesting. If I had to make a change, I would say in the poll that I submitted, I did have Mizzou ranked. Because I do, a whole group of us at D1 submits our polls, and it is put together to get our rankings every week. I had Mizzou ranked, and I would say they are receiving votes, though, which we note as well. In the top 25, they did receive votes. Another team I think that people should keep an eye on that's not in the top 25, didn't receive votes, is Cal. And I think that's just because they've been on the rise every year since Chelsea Spencer has been there. But specifically, they return their middle infield that's been really, I think, underrated on the national level. Like Elon Butler was right near the top there for leading the Pac-12 in home runs last year. Acacia Anders was like sneaky good, like high average, high impact, but maybe just wasn't as talked about from coast to coast. So I just think they're important people to keep an eye on over in Berkeley, and we'll see what happens with the travel changes and everything too as they enter the ACC.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's more to come for that.
Brutal.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that shortly. So with that being said, we've taken a quick look, and there's more to dive in all throughout the season with the top 25 as it changes, as we actually get to see people play. But now we can talk a little bit about what we expect just overall in 2025. There, to me, is always the three parts to the season, right? Preseason, conference play, postseason. If you had to break it down, that's the way to do it. But for the preseason, we are so lucky, especially in recent years with college softball, the types of matchups that we get to see. It almost feels like you forget it's not Oklahoma City yet sometimes with the matchups that we get to see so early on. What are some of the teams you're excited to see?
For weekend one, day one, Oklahoma State opening up with Florida State. Really excited to see that matchup and see how this 2025 Florida State squad looks. I think the thing that I love about Florida State the most is, like, no matter what, their identity always seems like they're moving in the same direction. They seem like a really tight-knit group with great chemistry. It always feels like they can do some magical stuff no matter what their roster looks like. So I'm excited to see the way that they bounce back from last year. And then Tennessee and Nebraska also open up playing each other. So I'm excited about those two specifically for weekend one.
And you said it's just barely weekend one, and we're getting those kinds of things. It's awesome. I cannot wait. Day one, not only weekend one, day one. Texas Tech and Nebraska are playing each other. AKA, we're hoping, we'll see, what comes down to it on the lineup card the day of, but that it's Nigel Kennedy and Jordy Ball in the circle. Head-to-head opening weekend, especially after Jordy got hurt last year, right? And didn't get to actually compete. To see those two go at it, both at new places with new faces, so exciting.
So exciting. And I saw an interview of Jordy Ball's recently where someone had asked, what was it like, 1 year having to take the back seat. And she spoke to, I think it was really good for me because it forced me to take a deep breath and take a break. And she was like, I would have never had enough clarity to tell myself I needed a break. So she was like, it was a really good way for me to sit back a little bit. She's like, I feel so recharged and ready. So I just can't wait to see her feel at home in that Nebraska uniform and a healthy and rested Jordy Ball and see what 2025 has in store for her.
Totally agree. And we do have him at 13 and 14, Texas Tech, Nebraska, respectively. And that, again, as a player, right, you don't go into it thinking about those kinds of things. But as the college softball fans that we are, it's just interesting to talk about those types of matchups. I'm also excited to see some of these with the college realignment situation, the conferences changing up, former conference foes playing each other in the preseason. So, for example, Stanford is actually going to the Hillenbrand Invitational Week 3 in February. So they're going to play Arizona in February, which is just not something we're used to in past past iterations of this sport. But now it's technically an ACC Big 12 matchup. And we're going to get to see more of those types of things with some of this realignment.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's weird to see the matchups so soon of like things you feel like you're so used to seeing them later in the spring. But yeah, it's going to be an adjustment for all of us, I think, for at least this year, but it's going to be great softball nonetheless. It's going to be great.
I've seen, I think, people saying like, it's still weird for me on Twitter, let's say. It's still weird for me to see Texas, associated with the SEC, and Kat Osterman will be like, yeah, me too. I'm still getting used to it, right? So we're all in the same boat when it comes to that.
Totally.
I'm also going to be in Clearwater week 2 for the ESPN tournament, the event, and then Mary Nutter as well. So I'm just excited to see some things in person that early on too. I know you and I were geeking out watching Nyjah throw last year in Clearwater, for example.
So fun.
Yes. Also, have to ask you, because I'm always excited about seeing uniforms. And one of the uniforms that I've seen, for example, like Oregon, if you zoom into their numbers, right, you can see the ducks flying on it, and it just looks so cool. What are some programs that you're like, oh, I really like their uniforms?
Gosh, well, obviously Oregon. I think that, Arizona has always been such a traditional uniform for me. I love red, white, and blue and the way that they complement each other. But I feel like everyone has tried to do some special things throughout the year. And like you said, like ducks, super cool. But Arizona has always kept it the same. And it just it's always made me feel like they're just the OG, like amazing program that is Arizona softball. So I always love Arizona's traditional uniforms. Obviously I love the Florida Gators and their uniforms. I know that they are breaking out some new ones, I think, this year. So I'm excited about those. I think LSU does a really good job. Oklahoma State. I think, they've all really stepped their game up. And the uniforms are looking better than ever.
Just all the combos that they have now. It's way more than when I played. It's even more than when you played, which was more recently.
Yeah. The stirrups, and gosh, it's definitely flashy. But you know what? Our sport deserves it. They're putting on a great show and look good, play good.
Agreed. I'm also excited. I would add, I agree. Arizona, just classic. Can't go wrong. Clemson, I do think that their purple-orange combination is just less common than other schools too. And I think they do a nice job of like bringing them together with their different options. So
I can get on board with that for sure. Go Tigers.
Yeah. Exactly. But now let's get into the conference realignment a little bit. So as a reminder, because the Pac-12 split up and it went all over the place, basically. So Stanford and Cal in the ACC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon in the Big 10, and Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah now in the Big 12. So totally spread out throughout the country. But I think it's interesting when we look at the new teams that these conferences are getting. Nobody went to the SEC from the Pac-12, but Texas and OU also moved to the SEC. So that's still a big change. Who do we think in those, at least in the Power 4 conferences, will make a run for it and do kind of well?
I think UCLA is definitely gonna have the biggest splash in the Big Ten. I think that they are going to dominate the Big Ten as long as they stay warm and figure out how to play in the cold. So that's probably my main one. I think that they're gonna have a great year, but I think Oregon is gonna have a great year in the Big Ten as well. So I think that UCLA is my pick for winning the Big Ten in their first year, but I would not be surprised if Oregon is in there as well. And then I'm very excited to see Arizona and Utah join the Big 12. I'm excited it just feels like, I think of like, especially Arizona as like OG even like Pac-10 softball of just like, using the ground and fast-paced softball, bunting, and doing a lot of like really fast-paced things. And lately we've seen, especially once you get to the middle part of the country and on, everyone's trying to hit home runs. So I'm excited to see how Arizona softball blends in with the Big 12. And I think that they're going to have a great year as well.
I think you're right. They could be really interesting in the Big 12 because I think most polls, they're looking at Oklahoma State as a sort of consistent presence in the Big 12 now with the exit of Texas and OU, of course. Makes sense that they might kind of stick to the top there. And then, of course, Texas Tech with Nigeria Kennedy, and then all of the Louisiana transfers as well that came with Jerry Glasgow. But I think Arizona is going to surprise people too. I'm with you on that in the Big 12, and same with UCLA in the Big 10. I feel like they're poised to do really well. They returned Taylor Tinsley and Caitlin Terry, but then they also get Addison Fisher, who was one of the top recruits in the country in the circle. So they're pretty solid over there at Easton Stadium. When it comes to the ACC, I think, Duke is the team that went to the World Series last year and still has more of the same talent, let's say. Stanford still has Alyssa Houston in the circle, and they still have some people in important places, like in the infield with, River Mailer's at short last year, and Taryn Kern and Emily Jones in center field, who really made a splash. But Duke feels like they're just on a roll, like the momentum from year to year has been really impressive and hard to do. So I feel like them, along with Florida State, are also really in the mix there over in that conference. But I think Stanford and Cal might make things harder for people in the ACC.
Absolutely. They're absolutely adding value, which is important. And I think that the ACC has been consistently growing for a number of years of just getting better every year. And I think that obviously adding Stanford and Cal is just going to continue to strengthen their conference.
Yeah. And I do think every conference has benefited from those additions in terms of raising the talent level, for sure.
Yes.
And then when we look at the SEC, speaking of raising the level, already a high bar, but to have the two returning teams who were in the championship series at the World Series last year now joining, they go from the top of the Big 12 to, are they going to be at the top of the SEC right away? I think they have the tools for it.
Oh, absolutely. I think that obviously it's said a bunch, but in the SEC, you truly don't have a easy weekend, right? Like it's just really hard day in and day out competing in conference in the SEC. And not to say there are definitely some opponents that they would have, in the Big 12, certain weekends would be labeled as a little easier than others. And yeah, you can say that about the SEC too, but I think the level of competition day in and day out is going to be much more competitive. And I'm really excited to see how Texas and OU step up and just the day in and day out grind of how intense the SEC schedule is. It just means more, as they say. And I'm excited to see, specifically, I'm excited to see the OU and Texas people say it just means more after they hated saying it or refused to think it was cool for so long. So I'm excited to see the buy-in of just hearing how it means more in the SEC.
But you know what? That's fair. That's fair.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah. I think you're right too. For them to experience, of course, the SEC schools going to play, at Texas, at OU, especially Love Field, that's an experience in itself. But them getting to go to like the Swamp, go to Tuscaloosa, go to some of these new places in this like journey in their new conference, I think all it's going to do is make them even better, which is kind of scary as well.
Definitely scary.
Like we're all scared, basically.
Right. No, but also as a fan, it's so exciting. Like we are going to see some electric softball. Like for Big 12 fans, you tune in on Bedlam. You tune in for the Red River rivalry, and you just know that those games mean a little bit more. They're going to be a little bit crazier in the stands. Well, the SEC, that's every weekend they're crazy in the stands. Every weekend a fan is yelling some not nice things at you. So I think that, they're obviously used to it from some of those rivalries, but they're going to be getting it every single weekend now. And I can't wait to see how they use it to fuel them and just get better. But it's so much fun at the same time. Like I remember, my first time as a freshman going to Auburn and playing, and this is when Auburn was really, really good, and going in and hearing how insane those fans were. And I remember getting on the bus after, like, we get to do this every weekend. This is the coolest thing of my whole life. Like, and I just am really excited for the freshmen and the newbies to the SEC to experience just how electric that conference is.
Yes. And for a program like OU, who's used to having home field advantage, whether literally or virtually, maybe not, like sometimes, and see how they react. It'd be interesting.
I have no doubt that they will step up, but it's definitely
Yeah.
going to be interesting to watch something different for them. Obviously, their conference tournament will not be in their backyard every time. They won't get a little Hall of Fame stadium tune up before the World Series.
Right.
So it will definitely be different for them, but I know that they are going to be really excited for the challenge and ready.
Absolutely. And it all leads to postseason. You said it. OKC, Hall of Fame Stadium. I'm going to ask you a question that I'm always like, man, did you have to ask me that this time of year? So it's not really fair, but I'll answer it too. So don't worry. But who, if you had to pick right now, do you think is going to make it to OKC?
Gosh, I do hate this question because it's preseason. We haven't seen anything. And,
Exactly.
I am just really excited to see an exciting year. But if I have to choose, I'm going to go with Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Oklahoma State, Texas A&M, UCLA, and Duke. I think
Okay.
Duke is going to go back to back, so I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see Texas A&M this year. I think they're going to be great. Tennessee is going to get in there. Carlin Pickens won't be denied, and obviously a few other staples. But I'm excited about what this season is going to look like, and I hope I'm totally wrong. And we have a sleeper who is going to be absolutely amazing and knock some of my picks out. But that's where I'm at right now.
I'm with you. I don't mind being wrong. I think it's actually
No,
more
no.
fun, when that's the case. So I'm
Yes.
with you there. I think last year when we did sort of a preseason like preview situation with Michaela Chester over at NCAA softball too, she had us do our picks, and we talked about UCLA and Duke, and then they had Duke was pretty solid throughout the whole season, but UCLA had a tough start last year. But then look what they ended up doing, and I think we just love to see defying the odds in a good way.
Absolutely.
And what are the odds anyway? Let's be honest.
Yeah. So hard. What about you? Who are your?
I know you're like, you said you were going to answer it.
You put me on the hot seat. You have to say
I did. You're right. No, you're right. It's my turn. So, well, okay. If we look at the top 25 again, I think you could make an argument that the top 8 could go.
Absolutely.
Like that is, and like I said, the top 5 feel pretty solid. Again, you can make arguments for different orders and things like that. But A&M and Florida State, that 8-9 spot, I think that's where I'm like, I'm not sure what's going to happen. But I'm with you. I think Duke can do it. I think Tennessee, you said it, and they got a chip on their shoulder, I think, a little bit this year for sure after that, which is only going to fuel them even more. So right now, it somewhat seems quote unquote chalk, but I'm sure whatever that looks like with our rankings and just how things turn out, it's going to change a lot this year. So, we talked about the Geordie Balls, the Niger Kennedys, so the Texas Tech, Nebraska type teams can make a run. You never know.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, literally, that's what we're here for.
Here for the mayhem.
Yes, mayhem, and some mayhem in February, which is awesome.
Yeah, I would prefer that.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too that we get the privilege at D1Softball is seeing all kinds of really cool data from our friends at 643. We've talked about Diamond Sports rankings, which is essentially a more optimized and in theory a more accurate version of the RPI. And I think just between that and some of the deep dives that they're able to do for different teams, it's just really cool to see the different trends and how the game has evolved. For example, the final 8 in both the DSR and RPI were not necessarily the final 8 that were in OKC last year. Some of them, yes, but there were a couple. I think it was 6 out of 8 for both. And in RPI, Texas finished at number 1 in RPI. Doesn't matter because what matters is the ring, and that's what Oklahoma did, and they took care of business. But that's why the data, it's interesting to see how the data matches up with what happens on the field. So we'll see some of that too. But also our segments that we love to do every week, our plays of the week and our win and whiff of the week. And for those who have tuned in before, plays of the week, our favorite on-field moments during game time. And as Kat Osterman deemed her best hitter in the game right now, Amanda tends to like the offensive stuff. I'm a defense kind of girl, but we like to mix it up too. So
yeah, we'll surprise you here and there.
Yeah. You never know. And then the win and whiff of the week too, where The win is, would we describe it as just good vibes?
Yeah, something fun, and then the whiff is usually something funny, not that serious. Just trying to add a little bit of jazz hands into the podcast.
Yeah,
But like the best thing about that, you could be the whiff this week and you could be the win next week. Like it's ever
totally.
changing.
Yes. And even like bigger picture stuff. Like I think we made the weather in Clearwater last year since half the tournament was canceled. Like we're like, okay,
Huge
that's
miss.
the whiff. Yeah. Like easily, for
Yeah,
example. And it's all in good fun for all these
absolutely.
things. Well, man, I just can't wait. I just can't wait for what all that's next, for what we're doing here with this show, but also just all that's to come for softball, both college, both pro, getting to see you play, but doing this in the meantime too this season.
It's going to be great. I'm excited and hope that you guys continue to stay with us and hear what we have to say about this amazing softball season.
Yep, that's right. And what's next? The D1 team. We're going to be all over the place for opening weekend, which is kind of the best. It's the way to do it. Getting just first looks at these teams and the players in action. I'm going to be calling the tournament at Stanford, so you can tune into ACC Network Extra if you want to take a look. They're hosting Long Beach State, Seattle, and Fresno State.
And not just hosting, they're hosting in the football stadium, which we didn't touch on. So I think we need to talk about that really quick. Jenna, take it away because that is amazing.
It's super cool. And I was able to MC a preseason barbecue that they've done for the last 3 years with, donors, season ticket holders, etc., in the stadium, like in the skybox overlooking the field. And the players are really excited about it. Even talking with like Sarah Gronewagen's on staff. She's a former pitcher, right? She was like, yeah, the bullpens are actually nice. When you hear a pitcher say that, you're like, okay, they actually are nice.
Especially Sarah G. She has incredibly high standards.
Yes, exactly. So that was encouraging. And just seeing the field, they've all said that the dirt feels good, it just feels really exciting for them to be in the football stadium.
It looks amazing. Like that's really amazing that the AD at Stanford was like, let's do this and make it happen. I cannot wait to see how Stanford fans show up and show out. A lot of you guys are going to need to show up to games to make it look like there's a good amount of fans in those seats. So
it's true.
Time to support some female athletes and get out there and watch some really good softball. I'm really excited about that. And I can't wait to see how it looks on TV as well.
See, look at that. I gave the Gators some love early on. You're giving the Cardinals some love. Look at that. Love that.
Come on. Look at us.
Yes. So if you want to see some cool views in addition to some fun softball, tune in and show up if you're in the area.
Show up.
Yes. And then opening weekend, Amanda, I'm sure you're going to be locked in.
Like so excited. My plans include softball, so I'm excited to see and just follow all of the teams, specifically in our top 25, and see how they do this weekend. But really excited that we're back. Excited to see some freshmen make a big splash on the scene. Excited to see how the seniors make a lasting impact during their last year. Just a lot of excitement coming up, and I know that we'll get to talk about it all this season. So excited.
Oh gosh, yeah, we've barely scratched the surface. Tip of the iceberg, maybe even if that. But thank you everybody for joining us. If you stuck around till the end, we actually have a little surprise for you. So you can get a 25% discount with a D1 softball subscription, any subscription, monthly, annual, whatever it is, with the season 25 code. Subscribe now, save. There's so much great info. Like the writers on our editorial team also just go into depth on absolutely everything. I use the information for broadcasting before I ever even worked for D1. And it's just incredible. So take advantage of this if you want to be up to date on college softball. That's what you got to do.
I do.
Exactly. Thank you, Amanda.
I want to be up to date.
Yes, up to date and thriving. That's what we're doing this year.
Yep.
Well, with that, thank you everybody for joining us. We will see you next time, but let us know what you want to hear about, what you want to know in the meantime, and we'll try to work it in. We're excited to be with you guys again this year.
Thanks, guys.